In 1977, a research submarine descended into the waters off the coast of Hawaii. At exactly 610 feet below the surface, the scientists aboard witnessed something that would change our understanding of ocean life forever. Through their viewing port, they saw what appeared to be a snowstorm. But this was not snow. It was a massive migration of billions upon billions of creatures rising from the depths below, all moving in perfect synchronization. They had discovered the largest animal migration on planet Earth, and it happens every single night in a zone that most people have never heard of. You are watching Science Revealed, and today we are diving into the Twilight Zone, the most misunderstood and possibly the most important layer of the ocean. When most people hear Twilight Zone, they think of the classic television show about parallel dimensions and strange mysteries. But the ocean's Twilight Zone is far more bizarre than anything from that series, and the creatures that live here are stranger than any science fiction writer could imagine. This zone sits between 650 feet and 3,300 feet below the ocean surface. It is officially called the Mesopelagic Zone, from the Greek words mesos, meaning middle, and pelagos, meaning sea. This is the middle layer of the open ocean, trapped between the bright sunlit waters above and the pitch black abyss below. The defining characteristic of the Twilight Zone is that it exists in perpetual dim light. Sunlight does penetrate here, but barely. Only about 1% of surface light reaches the upper boundary, and by the time you descend to the lower boundary, virtually no light remains at all. The light that does filter down is predominantly blue because water absorbs red wavelengths first. This creates an eerie blue glow that fades into darkness as you descend deeper. Your eyes would struggle to see anything clearly, and colors would appear washed out and distorted. It is a world caught between light and darkness, between the familiar and the alien. The temperature in the Twilight Zone ranges from about 39 degrees Fahrenheit to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on location and depth. This might not sound extreme, but it represents a dramatic drop from the warm surface waters. The pressure is significant, ranging from about 290 pounds per square inch at the top of the zone to over 1,450 pounds per square inch at the bottom. That is between 20 and 100 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. Any human without specialized equipment would be crushed instantly. Now let me tell you something that will blow your mind. The Twilight Zone contains more fish than all other parts of the ocean combined. Scientists estimate there are between 1 billion and 10 billion tons of fish living in this single layer. That is more biomass than all the fish we catch globally in an entire decade. Some researchers believe this zone contains more animal life than the rest of the ocean's habitats put together, and yet, until recently, we knew almost nothing about it. We have mapped the surface of Mars in more detail than we have mapped the Twilight Zone. Think about that for a moment. We know more about the geography of a dead planet millions of miles away than we do about a layer of our own ocean that is teeming with life. Let me introduce you to some of the creatures that call this zone home, starting with one of the most abundant fish on Earth that you have probably never heard of. The bristlemouth is a tiny fish, usually only about 2 to 3 inches long, with a mouth full of needle-like teeth and bioluminescent organs along its belly. These fish are so numerous that they may be the most abundant vertebrate on the planet. There could be hundreds of trillions of them living in the Twilight Zone. To put that in perspective, there are more bristlemouths in the ocean than there are humans, cattle, chickens, rats, and every other land animal combined. They outnumber us by a factor that is almost impossible to comprehend. And yet most people have never seen one or even heard of them because they live in this hidden realm between light and darkness. Then there is the hatchetfish, which looks exactly like its name suggests. Its body is shaped like a hatchet blade, extremely thin when viewed from the front, but deep when viewed from the side. This strange body shape serves a crucial purpose. When predators look up from below, the hatchetfish's thin profile makes it nearly invisible, but that is not its only trick. The hatchetfish has rows of bioluminescent organs on its belly called photophores. These organs produce light that matches the faint, downwelling light from the surface above. This is called counter-illumination, and it is one of the most sophisticated camouflage systems in nature. By producing light on its underside, the hatchetfish eliminates its own shadow. Predators looking up from below see nothing because the fish's bioluminescence blends perfectly with the dim light filtering down from above. It is essentially invisible to anything hunting from beneath. The dragonfish is perhaps one of the most terrifying predators of the Twilight Zone. These fish can grow up to 2 feet long, though most are much smaller. They have elongated bodies covered in dark, sometimes iridescent scales. Their most striking feature is their mouth, which is filled with long, needle-like teeth that are so large they cannot fit inside when the mouth is closed. The teeth stick out at angles, giving the dragonfish a permanent, nightmarish grin. Some species of dragonfish have a long barbel, a flexible appendage that hangs from their chin like a fishing line. At the tip of this barbel is a bioluminescent lure that pulses and glows, attracting curious prey. When a small fish or crustacean approaches to investigate the light, the dragonfish strikes with lightning speed. But here is what makes the dragonfish truly extraordinary. Most bioluminescent organisms in the ocean produce blue or blue-green light because water absorbs other wavelengths quickly. But some species of dragonfish can produce red light. This is incredibly rare in the deep ocean because most creatures cannot see red light at these depths. Their eyes have evolved to detect blue light, which is most common in deep water. The dragonfish effectively has its own night vision goggles. It can shine red light on potential prey without them knowing they are being illuminated. Imagine being hunted by something that can see you perfectly, but you cannot see it. That is the reality for creatures living in the Twilight Zone when a dragonfish is nearby. The vampire squid is another resident of the Twilight Zone, though despite its name, it is not actually a squid. It is not an octopus either. It is something in between, the only surviving member of its own unique order called Vampiromorphida. The vampire squid has a dark, reddish-brown body, huge blue eyes that are proportionally the largest of any animal on Earth, and 8 arms connected by a webbing of skin that resembles a vampire's cape. When threatened, the vampire squid can invert this webbing, turning itself inside out and exposing rows of fleshy spines called cirri. These spines make the vampire squid look much larger and more dangerous than it actually is. It also has bioluminescent organs all over its body and can produce clouds of glowing mucus that it ejects into the water to confuse predators. Imagine being chased in near darkness, and your pursuer suddenly releases a cloud of glowing slime that blinds and disorients you. That is how the vampire squid survives. But the vampire squid is not a fearsome predator, despite its name and appearance. It is actually a gentle scavenger that feeds on marine snow. Marine snow is the constant rain of dead organic matter that falls from the upper layers of the ocean. Bits of dead plankton, fecal matter, discarded mucus, and decaying tissue all drift down through the water column. The vampire squid uses 2 thin filaments that extend from between its arms to collect this falling debris. It pulls the filaments back in, scrapes off the accumulated matter with its arms, and packages it into a ball before eating it. This creature, with such a terrifying name, is essentially the ocean's vacuum cleaner. Now, I mentioned earlier that scientists discovered the largest animal migration on Earth happening in the Twilight Zone. This phenomenon is called diel vertical migration, or daily vertical migration, and it is one of the most spectacular events in nature that almost nobody has witnessed. Every single night, as the sun sets, billions upon billions of creatures rise from the Twilight Zone toward the surface. They travel hundreds or even thousands of feet upward to feed on the abundant plankton in the sunlit waters. Then, before dawn, they descend back down into the safety of the Twilight Zone to hide from predators during the day. This migration involves so many animals that it actually shows up on sonar. During World War II, naval sonar operators detected what they thought was a false seafloor that rose and fell each day. They called it the deep scattering layer. It took decades before scientists realized they were not detecting a geological feature. They were detecting countless millions of tons of living creatures moving up and down through the water column in unison. Why do these creatures make this journey every single day? The answer is simple: food and safety. The surface waters are rich with phytoplankton, tiny photosynthetic organisms that form the base of the ocean food chain. These phytoplankton need sunlight to survive, so they live in the upper layers of the ocean. Small zooplankton, tiny animals like copepods and krill, feed on the phytoplankton, and in turn, larger creatures feed on the zooplankton. But the surface waters are also where most predators hunt during the day because visibility is good. By rising to the surface only at night, the creatures of the Twilight Zone can feed while avoiding most predators. Then they retreat back down into the dim light where they are much harder to see and hunt. The scale of this migration is staggering. Scientists estimate that somewhere between 5 billion and 10 billion tons of biomass moves up and down through the ocean every single day. That is roughly equivalent to the weight of all human beings on Earth, making a vertical journey of hundreds of feet every single night. It is the largest movement of animals on the planet, and it happens in almost every ocean on Earth every single night. And most people have no idea it is even occurring. This migration is not just fascinating from a biological perspective. It is also crucial for the health of our planet. When creatures from the Twilight Zone rise to the surface to feed, they consume organic matter. Then, when they descend back down, they excrete waste and eventually die. This process transports carbon from the surface waters down into the deep ocean, where it can be locked away for centuries or even millennia. This is called the biological carbon pump, and the Twilight Zone is the engine that drives it. Without this daily migration, much more carbon dioxide would remain in the atmosphere, accelerating climate change. The creatures of the Twilight Zone are helping to regulate the Earth's climate, and they have been doing it for millions of years without any recognition or thanks, but there is a problem. Humans have discovered the Twilight Zone, and we are already planning to exploit it. Commercial fishing companies are developing new technologies to harvest fish from this layer. They see the enormous biomass and think it represents an untapped resource that could feed billions of people. But scientists are sounding the alarm. Fishing in the Twilight Zone could be catastrophic. These fish are small, grow slowly, and many species are not suitable for human consumption. More importantly, removing vast numbers of fish from the Twilight Zone would disrupt the biological carbon pump. If we destroy the daily migration, we destroy one of the ocean's most important carbon storage mechanisms. The consequences for global climate could be severe. There's also another threat facing the Twilight Zone: ocean acidification. As the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, the water becomes more acidic. This affects the ability of many marine organisms to build shells and skeletons. Many creatures in the Twilight Zone have delicate bodies with minimal skeletal structures, but they depend on creatures with shells for food. If shell-forming organisms decline, the entire food web of the Twilight Zone could collapse. Climate change is also altering the temperature and chemistry of ocean waters. These changes are affecting the timing and magnitude of the vertical migration. Some species are migrating at different times or to different depths than they did in the past. These disruptions could have cascading effects throughout the entire ocean ecosystem. We are only beginning to understand how interconnected these systems are, and we are changing them faster than we can study them. Scientists are racing to explore and document the Twilight Zone before it is too late. New technologies like autonomous underwater vehicles, advanced sonar systems, and remotely operated submersibles are allowing researchers to study this zone in ways that were impossible just a few decades ago. They are discovering new species almost every time they dive. In 2020, researchers estimated that we have only identified about 20% of the species living in the Twilight Zone. That means there could be tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of species we have never seen or studied. Many of these species could go extinct before we even know they exist. One of the most exciting areas of research involves studying the bioluminescence of Twilight Zone creatures. Scientists have discovered that nearly 90% of organisms in this zone can produce their own light. This makes it one of the most bioluminescent environments on Earth. Each species has evolved unique light patterns and colors for different purposes. Some use light to attract mates, some to lure prey, some to confuse predators, and some to communicate with members of their own species. Researchers are studying these light patterns to understand the complex social behaviors and ecological relationships in this zone. They are even developing new technologies inspired by these organisms, including more efficient LED lights and advanced optical sensors. The Twilight Zone also plays a critical role in supporting larger marine animals. Many species of whales, sharks, and other predators dive into the Twilight Zone to hunt. Sperm whales, for example, can dive over 3,000 feet deep and hold their breath for over an hour while hunting giant squid and other deep-sea prey. Beaked whales can dive even deeper, reaching depths of nearly 10,000 feet. These animals depend on the abundant life in the Twilight Zone for survival. If we disrupt this ecosystem, we disrupt the entire ocean food web, from the smallest plankton to the largest whales. Here is something that should terrify you. We are planning to fish the Twilight Zone before we have even finished mapping it, before we understand how it works, before we know what lives there, and before we comprehend the role it plays in regulating our planet's climate. We are about to exploit an ecosystem that could be more important to human survival than the Amazon rainforest. And we are doing it because we see short-term profit without considering long-term consequences. This is not speculation or exaggeration. Fishing companies are already testing equipment. Governments are already issuing exploratory permits. The race to exploit the Twilight Zone has begun, but there is hope. Internationals. Organizations are working to establish protections for the Twilight Zone before industrial fishing begins. Scientists are calling for a moratorium on all commercial fishing in this zone until we understand it better. Environmental groups are pushing for the creation of large marine protected areas that would include significant portions of the Twilight Zone. And some governments are listening. The challenge is time. Can we study, understand, and protect this ecosystem before it is too late? The Twilight Zone represents something profound about our relationship with nature. It is a reminder that the ocean is not just a resource to be exploited. It is a complex, interconnected system that has been functioning for millions of years. It is a reminder that there are still vast frontiers on our own planet that we have barely begun to explore. It is a reminder that sometimes the most important places are the ones we cannot easily see or access. And it is a reminder that our actions have consequences even in places we never visit. The creatures of the Twilight Zone have survived for millions of years in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. They have evolved extraordinary adaptations to thrive in near darkness, under crushing pressure, in cold water, and with limited food. They have created one of the most complex and productive ecosystems on the planet. And they have done all of this while playing a critical role in regulating the Earth's climate and supporting ocean life from the smallest plankton to the largest whales. The question is whether they can survive us. Will we protect the Twilight Zone, or will we exploit it until it collapses? Will we recognize its value before it is too late, or will we learn its importance only after we have destroyed it? Let me share something that gives me hope. In 2021, researchers discovered something remarkable in the Twilight Zone off the coast of Costa Rica. They found evidence of what they are calling twilight zone nurseries. Certain species of sharks and rays are using the dim waters of the Mesopelagic zone as safe havens for their young. The baby sharks remain in the Twilight Zone during their most vulnerable early months, protected from surface predators by the darkness and depth. This discovery suggests that the Twilight Zone is even more critical to ocean health than we previously understood. It is not just a feeding ground and migration highway. It is also a nursery for some of the ocean's most important predators. There is also emerging research suggesting that the Twilight Zone contains vast deposits of rare earth elements and valuable minerals. These materials, concentrated in the bodies of countless organisms over millions of years, have settled on the seafloor beneath the Twilight Zone. Mining companies are already eyeing these deposits, but extracting them would require massive industrial operations that would devastate the ecosystem. We are facing a choice between short-term resource extraction and long-term ecological preservation. History has shown us time and time again what happens when we choose short-term profit over environmental protection. We lose forests, we lose species, and ultimately, we lose the natural systems that support human civilization. Some researchers are exploring ways to use technology from the Twilight Zone to benefit humanity without destroying the ecosystem. The bioluminescent chemicals produced by deep-sea creatures are being studied for medical applications, including cancer research and drug development. The antifreeze proteins found in some Twilight Zone fish could have applications in organ preservation for transplants. The pressure-resistant materials in deep-sea organisms could inspire new engineering solutions. These creatures have evolved solutions to problems that human engineers are still trying to solve. They represent a library of biological innovations that could benefit humanity for generations, but only if we preserve them. The choice is ours, but the window to make that choice is closing fast. Every day that passes, we lose a little more of the Twilight Zone to warming waters, acidification, and human exploitation. Every species that goes extinct takes with it millions of years of evolutionary innovation that we can never recover. What do you think is the most fascinating thing about the Twilight Zone? Is it the largest animal migration on Earth happening every night, the bizarre creatures with their bioluminescent adaptations, or the critical role this zone plays in fighting climate change? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to learn more about the deep ocean and the incredible creatures that live there, check out the video on screen now where we explore the strangest bioluminescent creatures ever discovered. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.